Welcome to episode number 339, where I'm speaking with Dhyana Masla about her new book, Ayurveda Mama, a comprehensive guide to preparing for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. We talk about the Ayurvedic perspective on preparing the body for conception and the sacred window of postpartum. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. Hello and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. Today I'm very happy to welcome Dhyana Masla, who was born to a family of Bhakti yoga practitioners with the practices and teachings of Ayurveda woven seamlessly throughout her life. Growing up around her family's retreat center, she was trained in all the healing modalities that are offered there and witnessed firsthand the profound healing that happens when the principles of Ayurveda are applied in one's daily life. Through her yoga and Ayurveda trainings, as well as her online community, Soul Space, she empowers countless individuals to become healers in their own homes and to live a life of real meaning. She's the author of Ayurveda Mama, a comprehensive guide to preparing for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, which comes out May 28th. And that's what we're going to chat about today, Dhyana. Lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Colette. It's such a gift to be here with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to getting into this conversation. And your book is so in-depth, covers all aspects, as you say, from preconception to postpartum. And there's such a wealth of information there. We could spend hours a day talking about it. But today, I would love to focus on the phases I feel that are not focused on in Western medicine, which is the preconception and postpartum phases. And this is where I think Ayurveda really offers huge amount of value to people, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. Well, before we get into all that, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey and the journey that brought you to writing this book and why it was important for you to share this information.
Yeah, such a good question. When I was wanting to get pregnant with my first baby, I was really doing the research to see what does Ayurveda have to say about preconception. And I found blogs here and there, some articles here and there, some ancient texts about Garbhadan Samskara, which is the conscious way of inviting a soul into the womb. But there was nothing very comprehensive. And so I reached out to my teachers and I was really trying to find like something that I could follow that would really support me in that process. While I was pregnant, I was sharing a lot on my social media platforms about what I was doing, the herbs I was taking, the lifestyle practices, and even into postpartum, I was sharing these things, and so many mamas would reach out to me and just say, I wish I had this information when I was pregnant, or if only I knew this. And like you said, it's like, there's not so much out there. So even during pregnancy, people would say, wow, you're so vibrant. You seem so healthy and happy. In the West, oftentimes we hear about the struggles of pregnancy and then the struggles of postpartum. And that's not the way that nature intended for this beautiful process of woman's life to be. We're actually meant to thrive, and we're meant to be more beautiful and vital than ever. And I felt like Ayurveda was really, really supporting me in that process. And I wanted it to be more available. And then it was really, I started the book right before my son was born. But then it was 3 days after his birth. It was actually the first time I cried after birthing him. I was laying on the bed holding him and tears were just flowing down my face. And I was feeling like, wow, like this deep, deep wish. I wish every child could be loved like this. And then the heartache of knowing that not all children are so loved and so wanted. And so, because of that, so many of us, as we grow older, we spend so much of our lives doing the work of healing those parts of us that were never wanted, that didn't feel welcomed, that felt like we were too much or too loud, because of the unconscious preparation, oftentimes no preparation, and also the unconscious parenting. And so I felt like I really wanted to write a book from preconception through pregnancy, the experience of labor and birth and how important that experience is, as well as postpartum, knowing that during this time, this little being is actually growing their fundamental experience of self. And how can we support that so that they, from the onset of conception, feel wanted and loved and held and nourished in all the ways needed.
Beautiful. I love that. And I love in your book how you went into your own personal pregnancy journey and birthing journey with each of your children, which is beautiful as well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. And as you said in your book, Ayurveda emphasizes the value of preparation before conception, as well as the intention during conception to call in the soul who ideally will bring more light and goodness into the world by welcoming them with the same energy. So really important to prepare the body, to prepare mentally, emotionally. Can you tell us more about the Ayurvedic perspective on preparing the body for conception, please?
Yeah. I mean, something I love about Ayurveda is it's this ancient and thus time-tested science that now even modern science is validating or confirming. And I love that. It's so beautiful because even modern science now knows that the egg and the sperm gather information from both parents moments to hours before conception. And so whatever the parents are feeling, their emotional state during that time, their mental state during that time is actually imprinted upon the fetus at the moment of conception as their first embodied experience. And so Ayurveda really suggests, Ayurveda says at least 6 months prior to conception, begin to prepare your body and begin to prepare your mind, your heart, your life, your relationship. It's like the field. It's like all of these things need to be cultivated and prepared consciously and intentionally, knowing that at the moment of conception, that, wow, this is my baby's first experience of self, of life. And so couples would prepare their bodies and they would explore the dynamics of their relationship and really feel into what's happening in my mind, what emotions arise, what habits or tendencies do I have that I don't want to pass on to my little one, what beliefs are actually very limiting to me, because whatever we embody, it's like even, the first 7 years of a child's life, they are swimming in the realm of our subconscious. And so Ayurveda really suggests do the work so that you're as prepared as you can be. Obviously, we're not going to be perfect. And I feel like parenting is something that really reveals that to us. All of those small parts of ourselves that are unhealed or do not feel whole, they're really revealed during the parenting journey. And so it's not about being perfect, but it's about doing everything that we can to really create an environment that is as loving and as nourished as can be as we bring a child into this world.
Really is suggesting starting with yourself, 6 months or even longer than that you're going on your own journey with your physical, mental, emotional health, and really taking that journey and looking at preparing the soil for this new baby and making sure that you have the vitality, the resources, and the emotional, mental strength and resilience, right? Because it can be challenging. I'm not a mother, but I have a big family. But I know it can be challenging in the sense that it's such a change from what you were used to before, prior to a baby arriving. So going on this journey is really important. And so what does Ayurveda suggest during this time? It's cleansing the body, preparing the body, pulling back the layers and going a little deeper on that emotional journey.
Yeah. I mean, the texts of Ayurveda talk about 6 months prior to conception. So the first 3 months would be a time of cleansing. And so really simplifying the diet, really focusing on whole foods, 3 meals a day, no snacking in between. So really a time of cleansing the body. And Ayurveda acknowledges that we are whole humans. And so when we cleanse the body, it's not just the physical aspect of ourself. If anybody has ever done a cleanse, likely they acknowledge that as the body moves into a cleansing state, it's like toxins are stored in the fat. And so as the fat starts to be cleansed, our emotions are also stored there. And so emotions may start to arise. Memories may start to arise. And the way that we heal them is actually having the space to feel them. Because likely whatever is stored in the body, it's stuff that we didn't want to feel. It was too painful at the time, or we didn't yet have the resources or tools. And so setting up a support system, maybe it's a person that is able to hold the space for you to feel and thus heal and integrate all the experiences that you've had in your life that you didn't feel able to process. And so the 3 months of cleansing is really a time where, yes, we're cleansing the physical body, but it's so much deeper than that. We're opening and holding the space for whatever needs to be healed. Like let it integrate, not necessarily leave me, but let it be integrated so that I can become more whole, so that I can use my quote unquote traumas or past experiences that didn't sit well. I can use them as actually fuel for growth and evolution and for becoming more of who I'm meant to be in this life. And so the first 3 months is really, really focused on holding the space for that to happen. And then the following 3 months before conception is really a time focused on nourishment. And so mama's body is going to be the body of this little person, actually for the next 10 months, and then likely beyond that as well, if the mom is going to be breastfeeding, but also just energetically, the mom is holding a lot of space for this other person. And so we want mama to be very, very, very nourished. And so Ojas building foods, which I'm sure you've touched on in this podcast, foods that are really building and nourishing to the system, making sure that the Agni, the digestive fire, is very strong so that she's able to not only digest and assimilate her food, but also life experiences as they arise. She can feel that everything that happens is happening for my growth and for my deepening. Sometimes we become the victim to life. All this is happening to me. But when the Agni is strong, there's this feeling of everything that's happening is happening for me. And we can utilize everything as fuel on our path. And so those 3 months are really to nourish the body so that mama's nervous system is soothed and calm and stable. And so that when the soul enters into her womb, she's feeling fully nourished. She's feeling stable. Her mind is calm so that she can carry this being with ease and a surplus of energy.
Beautiful, beautifully said. And actually, I just did another podcast episode totally on Ojas. So it's perfect timing just before this one.
Amazing.
And now we're talking a lot about mama, obviously, which is important, but I do appreciate that you give an exercise in the book on how to prepare as a couple. And I really like that there's this exercise that you give that focuses on the mental, emotional state of the parent. And I think that's really important because people can get caught up in the pregnancy and whatnot. And can you share a little bit about why this is important, first of all, and some of the samples of the questions on this exercise that you share in your book?
Yeah. We heal in relationships. And oftentimes where our greatest wounding comes from is relationships as well. And so relationships, they really create our experience of life. If we feel connected in them, if we feel thriving in them, likely we feel like we're growing in life, like life feels alive and exciting and beautiful. Though if we feel disconnected, if there's not love flowing in our relationship, especially with our primary partner or the father of our child, it's really draining for our life. Like life becomes very gray and everything just feels harder. And then especially entering into parenthood with our partner, suddenly it's not just about me and you and whatever arises in our dynamic, but we're taking responsibility for this other being, which, like you said, it's so beautiful and amazing and brings so much joy and also some of the deepest challenges can arise in that dynamic. And so preparing your relationship first, meaning like, how can we connect more deeply? Where are our blind spots? Is there any part of me that doesn't fully trust you? And really churning like our relationship and making sure, like, are we in a thriving place? Because like I said earlier, our children feel everything. And our relationship with our partner is what creates the energy in our home. And our kids feel that. And so I know for me, like when me and my husband are in a thriving place, it's like the energy in our home is just so abundant. But if we don't feel connected, then it's like you like the kids can feel that. And my relationship with my husband is modeling what they're going to seek one day in their relationship. How I treat my husband, that's how my daughter's learning, oh, this is how a woman treats her husband. How my husband treats me, it's how my children are learning, oh, this is how a man treats a woman. And so they're learning just by being, just by seeing, just by watching. And so to build a relationship, it's like the highest vision and version of a relationship that you can imagine. How can we become that together for ourselves, but also for our children? And then how can we really prepare? Because it's hard to prepare because who knows what it's actually going to be like when this new soul enters in, because they have their own energy that they'll bring in. But as much as possible, how can we explore the questions that might arise? Like, how is our dynamic going to change when there's a third person living in our home? Whether it's intimacy or even just our daily rhythms, like what might change? How much responsibility do you see taking on? And how much responsibility do I see taking on? Are we going to need more support, whether it's grandparents, or do we have the ability to hire support? Or do I want to be a full-time mom always at home? And of course, like, you don't know until you're in it. Yeah. And so all of this is going to change, but to explore these things together is so supportive, and at least creating the vision of what do we want? What do we want to call in? And then deeper, like you were saying, what patterns do I have? You know, for me, in the beginning of my relationship with my husband, which I'm sure I probably had since I was a little girl, was whenever I was triggered by something he said or did or didn't do, I would just close down and I would restrict my love. And I would just like act like, well, I don't need you anyways. Like I would get very independent. Whereas other people, if they're triggered, they lash out or they get angry or they yell. And so it's like, well, what are my patterns? When I get triggered, how do I respond in a way that's not actually serving, that's not actually healthy, that doesn't actually bring about the type of life and interaction that I would see in a thriving dynamic. Mm. And so to look at those patterns, those triggers, those habits, those belief systems that don't actually serve, and to do the work necessary to heal them.
Yeah, such a valuable exercise, Dhyana. And it's so great that you put this exercise in there because, as I said, people often neglect that because there's so much more going on during a time of preconception and pregnancy. But as you said, doing that work in advance, understanding each other's triggers and their values and how is this going to work day to day going forward, this will mean it's such a smoother transition into this new life with baby. And that, as you said, babies are sponges. They're going to soak up the atmosphere, the energy, the interactions, and that's their foundational experience of a relationship, which Absolutely. Is huge, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of relationship and also of themselves, because children, they're very self-centered in the beginning, naturally. Yeah. And so everything outside of them is because of them. That's what they feel. Yeah. And so it really becomes like, wow, my parents are never feeling connected. They're always arguing. It's because of me. It has something to do with me, because everything is building their not only belief about relationships, but belief about who they are and what they contribute. And so it's so important.
That's a great point. It is true. It's their world and they're just seeking nurturing and validation, and it's all about them at that stage. So anything that's triggered, they think it's their fault sometimes, right? Yeah, so true. Yeah. Now, in your book, you said during pregnancy, your senses are the gateways between your inner and outer world, and they are also serving as a filter for your growing baby. So everything a pregnant mama tastes, sees, touches, hears, smells should be nourishing to both the mother and child. Whatever comes in through the senses shapes not only the body, but also the mind of the little one. So this is something I talk about again and again in podcast, and Ayurveda is talking about all the time. What we take into our senses is affecting our holistic health. And it's so important that we need to be aware of everything we put on our skin, what we're listening to, what we're seeing, what the energy we're in. So tell us more about the importance of focusing on our sensory health during pregnancy.
Yeah. Modern medicine or Western medicine really focuses on mama's diet, as this is what you really need to focus on as you're growing this baby. Whereas Ayurveda takes a more holistic perspective of you not only are what you eat, that's one of our senses, but you're also what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you feel. This all is building an experience of self. And so I'm sure we've all had an experience of, yes, like eating food that feels heavy, maybe leftovers, more tamasic food, and just feeling heavier afterwards. Like the mind just feels dulled. But we also feel that way. Like say you've watched a violent or horror movie or something that was just more dulling to the mind, or listening to a lecture that just felt like a little bit dull. It's like whatever comes in through our senses affects our consciousness, affects our mind, which affects everything. Like even right now, if you close your eyes and you imagine holding a lemon and licking the lemon, like likely you salivate. Mm. And so what we imagine, so whatever is happening in our mind, you can't deny it affects our physiology. And so again, we see the inseparability of our consciousness, our mind, and our body. And so Ayurveda says whatever comes in through our senses affects our mind, which affects our body. And at this stage, as mama's growing the baby, her body is not separate from baby's. And so whatever is coming in to her senses is affecting her mind, baby's mind, and her consciousness, baby's consciousness, her body, baby's body, because it's all one at this time. And so Ayurveda really urges us to see things that are uplifting, to hear things that are really uplifting and lightening, that bring joy, to eat foods that not only are nourishing for the body, that also bring mama pleasure and joy, and to feel beautiful, loving touch, and that everything mama experiences is downloading onto mama. Even modern medicine is now affirming that because mama's and baby's blood flow is in constant communication, all of the hormones that mama's body is experiencing, they're also moving through baby. And so if mama's stressed, like even just because she's watching something or listening to news that's stressing her out, it's like those same hormones are pulsing through baby and also building baby's experience, like the actual structure of baby's body. And so it's very important that everything mama sees, smells, hears, tastes, and feels is nourishing, uplifting. And then Ayurveda goes even deeper, that like, how do we connect baby to something deeper than just this physical realm? How do we connect baby to who they really are, their soul, source, the universe, God, whatever the greater energy is that you connect with? How do we connect baby to that? Mm. And so some ways Ayurveda suggests go to holy, sacred places, go into that energy that has been used, for centuries sometimes to connect to God or to grace. Go to temples, churches, mosques, synagogues, and soak in that energy, bathe in that energy. Spend time with holy people, whether it's through listening to lectures, or actually getting to be in their presence, and let baby soak in that energy. Eat food that has been offered on an altar in thanks to the earth, the farmers, and ultimately God, grace, who has provided it for us. And all of a sudden that food becomes spiritual nourishment, not just physical. And so there's so many ways to begin to first bathe in an uplifting atmosphere, but also bathe in an atmosphere that reminds us who we really are and why we're really here. If that's our intention, we want to invite the soul in, a soul who knows that they are whole, that they are here for a reason, that they are connected to God and to grace and can do that holy work in the world that is so needed. And so if that's why we want to invite the soul into the world, we need to ourselves bathe in that energy and realize that for ourselves more and more as well.
Beautiful. So really promoting a sattvic diet and lifestyle, right? Really bring in that energy of sattva, that balance, that peace.
Yeah. Yeah. And sattva, Ayurveda says it's our natural state. It's rajasic and tamasic impressions that pull us out of that natural state of purity, of clarity, of knowing. And so if we're bathing in more rajasic or tamasic impressions, ultimately it's the cause of all dis-ease. And disease is basically when we feel disconnected from ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful. So now you had this wonderful experience growing up in this Bhakti yoga environment, right? You grew up in a retreat center. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing.
My father, probably when I was 10 or 11, he opened the retreat center, but we grew up in a community where there were so many different practitioners of Bhakti yoga, and my family, their friends, their children.
Beautiful.
Surrounded by.
What a lovely sattvic environment to grow up in with all this awareness and consciousness around you. And so I'd love to draw on all this yoga knowledge you have as well and talk about a yogic practice throughout pregnancy. Should that change throughout the trimesters? I mean, obviously mama's body is changing. What would your guidance be in general throughout pregnancy?
Yeah, generally my suggestion to pregnant mamas is first, know your body and let your yoga practice be a practice of being in your body. Where it'd be very easy, like I oftentimes think that our yoga practice, it's a microcosm of the macrocosm of our life. And what we do on our yoga mat, it shows us how we're living our life. So it'd be very easy to be doing downward dog with our mind somewhere else completely, thinking about the past, planning the future, judging what's happening now. I like this. I don't like this. I want this. I don't want this. Though as much as possible, using your time on the mat to practice, how do I want to live? How do I want to be? Let me be where I am without judging, breathing deeply and noticing what am I feeling, because our body speaks. But the problem is we've forgotten how to listen, or we were never taught how to listen. And I feel like the first step in studying Ayurveda is really learning the art of listening to what our body is speaking, because it starts very quiet and we don't listen. It gets a little bit louder. If we still don't listen, it gets even louder. And then eventually, without even knowing, we have a disease. But if we are aware of what's happening in our body, we can listen to those small signs of, yes, that feels good. No, that doesn't feel good. We get into habits like drinking coffee every morning, or if we listen to our body, likely if we live in a very dry climate and it's the winter months, our body's not going to be asking for a drink that's, very drying to the system. And so it's like, if we don't listen, we just get into habits of ways of doing things, ways of living that are quite unconscious. And so the first step is use your time on the mat to listen. What feels good? Are you in your body or are you somewhere else? Are you in your mind? Are you in the past? Are you in the future? And then naturally, when you're listening to your body, at a certain point, it's not going to be comfortable to lie on your belly anymore. But again, not everybody can sense that immediately. So I suggest, around 4 months-ish is when you can stop lying on your tummy. But again, listening to your body is what's most important. If a woman is in tune with her body, she'll naturally know, okay, it doesn't feel good to lie on my belly at this time. Also, spinal twists intuitively at a certain point aren't going to feel good, especially really deep twists. I mean, even thinking about that, it makes sense. But, listening to your body, you'll know at a certain point, it doesn't feel good to twist deeply. And then also things that you're not used to doing, it might not be a time to try those things. And also I want to support the mama, like if it feels good, do it. It's not good or bad or right or wrong, and every body is different. though there are certain things generally that are indicated or contraindicated, like lying on the belly after 3 or 4 months, deep spinal twists. Those are some main things. Lying on the back. For me, I felt comfortable lying on my back, into 8 or 9 months for at least 20, sometimes 30 minutes. But for some mamas, after 3 minutes of lying on their back, they feel their heart beating more. They feel a little bit out of breath. Listen to your body. Your body knows best. And I feel like that's something that Western science has really taken away from the mama, is the knowing that she knows how to grow her baby and she knows how to birth her baby.
Yeah.
And it's like, if mama was just fed that throughout her entire pregnancy, rather than do this, don't do this, this is good, this is bad. It's like, mama, feel into it. You know what's best. Then I feel like our mama's experience of labor and birth would also be much, not necessarily easier, but there would be a lot more grace, a lot more trust, and a lot more of just the knowing that, like, I know how to do this. I don't need anything outside of me to tell me what position to be in or how to push or what to do. It's like, I was born for this.
Yeah.
And so I want mamas to feel that throughout pregnancy and also on their yoga mats and their practice, that, like, mama, you know what feels good. And because it's been so long since we've been told that, it might take some time to actually experience, like, I know what's best. And so general contraindications: lying on the belly after 3 or 4 months, lying on your back, if it doesn't feel good, more than 20 minutes, you can roll onto your side, and then deep spinal twists. Those are the main things in a yoga practice.
Yeah, great advice there. And I do think, unfortunately, that our trust in our intuition, our intuitive guidance has been stifled. But by bringing in this yoga practice and really living in tune with the circadian rhythm and with the practice of Ayurveda, it's bringing in that guidance, that inner knowing. And, yoga and Ayurveda are really about trusting yourself, and you're on your own journey to this self-realization. And in that comes this empowerment and this trust in your own intuitions, which is really important.
Yeah. And then also the first trimester, there's a lot of change, in our lives, in our bodies, a lot of movement. And so more stabilizing practices, like maybe if you're used to going to hot yoga or power yoga, it's like, just for this time, slow down. Some hatha practices, holding poses, coming into the legs, a little bit more grounding could be very nourishing and supportive. And also in your last trimester, as likely you're feeling a little more heavy, more kapha, but you also really want to prepare for the sacred window, which is always a time of excess vata. And so it's how to, again, bring more stability, more grounding, more holding, more nourishment to prepare for an ease-filled labor and birth, and also postpartum window.
Yeah. I love that you call it the sacred window. Tell us a little bit more about that.
The sacred window it's not mine. I didn't make that up. I don't know, Yesha Oakes perhaps coined that, or maybe it was even farther back than her. But after labor and the birth of your child, Ayurveda considers the first 42 days to be the sacred postpartum window. And it's really the acknowledgement of, first, baby was in mama's belly, and now baby is outside of mama's body. And so there's a lot of space, new space inside of mama's body. The organs are all in different places. And wherever there's space, air enters in. So this is vata. So much vata is happening. Mama's also losing a lot of liquids. Maybe it's blood, her breast milk. And so it's also more vata from the dryness. But then also, if you look at her life, so much change. Suddenly, my baby went from inside to outside. Suddenly there's 3. Suddenly I'm meant to mother somebody. Suddenly my relational dynamic with my partner is different. Suddenly, like, everything feels different, whether it's your first time becoming a mom, you're, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. It's like everything in that sacred window of time. It's so much change. And we experience something similar when it's like maybe the death of a loved one. It's like suddenly everything, like nothing feels the same anymore. Or maybe you just moved towns or moved houses. It's like everything is different. And what Ayurveda urges us during these big times of change, it's like this vata energy. Vata is change. is to honor it. To oftentimes when like change can feel uncomfortable, I just want things to go back to normal, which is why in our culture we see, mamas at the coffee shops with their 3-day-old babies. It's like, I just want to act like things are normal. And I felt that during both of my postpartum windows. It's like, I just want things to feel normal again because change can feel so uncomfortable. But with this sacred window, which Ayurveda says it's a time to not go outside, to not distract ourselves from what's happening. Let the changes in your life change you and honor it. And Ayurveda honors it. Like to honor, basically for me, it's like to pacify vata, to bring in nourishment, warmth, groundedness, stability, support through your diet, through your lifestyle, through the people that are in your environment, to be very, very conscious of that. Because baby at this time, baby has just left the womb space. In the womb space, baby didn't know, oh, I'm a little body that's inside my mama's body. Baby didn't know herself as separate. All of mama's emotions were baby. Then baby comes out of the body and baby still doesn't know herself as separate from mama. And so mama's emotions, how she is nourished, cared for, or maybe ignored or left alone or not fed nicely, it all creates the baby's, again, first experience of self outside in the world. Mm. And so oftentimes in the West, when we hear of postpartum, we hear of things like postpartum depletion, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, postpartum insomnia, postpartum hair loss. Like all of what we hear about postpartum are the imbalances. And if you look at it, they're all vata symptoms. Mm-hmm. Anxiety, fear, even depression can be a vata symptom. Hair loss. It's like all of these things. It's because mama's not feeling the warmth, the nourishment, the support, the care that she needs to feel in her nervous system so that she can then care for and nourish this being. And so Ayurveda says during this time, it's very important that mama stays stable, that she's not even going out of the house unless, you live in nature. So you stay in a very predictable environment where there's not energies coming in that could thwart the very sensitive nervous system that's in this state of everything's changing. And so we want to bring predictability, stability, warmth. And so warm food, mushy food, because Ayurveda says that during labor and birth, the Agni goes completely out. And so how do we rebuild that Agni consciously? Because also our digestion is going to be reflected in the digestion of our baby. And so oftentimes we see gassiness or even colic. What we first want to look to is, how is mama's digestion? And if her digestion is fine and baby's experiencing symptoms, how is mama's mood? Does she feel supported? Is she feeling any emotions that she needs help to process or to integrate? And so during this time, mama needs to be mothered in all the ways that maybe we weren't even mothered as children, and that our mothers might not even know how to mother because they likely weren't either. And so that's why this new wave of like Ayurveda coming into light in the Western world is so profound, because it gives us permission to let yourself be cared for. Yeah. Let yourself receive, let yourself be held, not because it's something extra, but it's something that's necessary. This is what's needed so that you can thrive and that you can welcome this new being into the world in a way that they feel that they are not a burden, that they can, your nervous system is soothed and at ease so that they can feel calm and at ease. And again, we take care of mama, and then mama can then just pour that love and that energy into baby.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And I think this is where the Ayurvedic wisdom is really profound and so important for mamas to understand. You said in your book that mothers who have just given birth are reborn with their babies. And according to Ayurveda, mama is basically as fragile as her baby. And as you're saying, this postpartum period is really about entering a cocoon, protecting your energy, as you said, making sure that you're feeling in a safe environment, because everything is changing. as you just said, and everything can feel a little shaky, and there's all this nervousness about what's ahead and excitement at the same time, and your emotions are going, and there's that vata irregularity in the body, and it's so important. And I think as well, preparing this in advance, preparing that community of trusted people around you, and in a world, and particularly in the West, where everything is hyper individualized, is making sure that you have your crew ready for that postpartum, and that those people who have been there with you throughout your pregnancy, that you accept the help when they say they're going to make you meals and they're going to maybe take care of you of other children and help you out. I think you really need to be open to help at this stage, right? It's so important.
As much as possible. And something that's a heartbreaking reality of modern day motherhood is that many mamas don't have their tribe or don't have their community of people. And so when I was working on my second draft of this book, I was really feeling into, I was like, wow, it could seem so luxurious to actually receive the postpartum care necessary in this modern day life. Because we don't have the village anymore. Many mamas don't have that. And so that's a whole other conversation of how to create the village, how to put ourselves out there to connect with like-minded mamas, that we all need each other on the journey of motherhood for so many reasons. And also, if it's just not a reality, I imagine there's going to be some pregnant mamas listening to this who are like, I just don't have that. Maybe I just moved to another country with my husband and I just don't have any friends. My parents aren't here. Just to know that it's possible, even on your own, to create a cocoon of nourishment where, yes, ideally we have our village around us and we have people to give us massages and cook all of our meals. And it's just not the reality for many, many mamas right now. And so how can, like you said, how can you prepare for postpartum? Getting a crock pot. The meals are so simple. I have recipes in my book that you can prepare, put a timer on in your crock pot so that every few hours you have a nourishing meal. Teas are very simple. Collect the herbs necessary. You can pour warm water on top of your tea leaves, let it steep, and nourish yourself that way. After your bleeding has slowed, rub yourself in oil, as often as possible.
Yeah.
Take baths. If nobody's there to hold your baby, invite your baby into the bath with you. And so again, it's not ideal to prepare this on your own, but don't think, oh, because I don't have a tribe or I don't have a lot of money to hire the help. Don't think that it's not possible for you to be nourished during this time. Because there are simple ways. And again, Ayurveda to me stands out so much because it's so simple. It's so simple, yet somehow when we apply the teachings or the practices consistently, it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
If I'm feeling overwhelmed or depleted and I just take the time to rub warm oil on my body, wow, it's so simple, yet it makes such a difference. I feel nourished suddenly. And so don't underestimate the simplicity yet profundity of the practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we do that because we think, in order for something to really work, it has to be challenging. We forget the simple things. And pranayam, is another profound one. When you're breastfeeding, or feeding your baby, practice pranayam. This is your time to really go into that mindfulness practice while you're sitting there,
Totally. And that it's not all or nothing. Because I feel like some of us have that mood of if I don't do it every day, then there's no point in me doing it at all. Do what you can.
Right.
It's even if you can have 2 really nourishing meals a day and then your last meal is somehow thrown together, it's do what you can.
Yeah.
Do what you can.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up about, maybe people are not going to have a community. And I have had that experience here because I'm in France. And so there's a big expat community. And when I had my yoga studio, I had, the baby and me classes, which was great after the postpartum stage where parents could get together and connect with each other because they can feel quite isolated. They may have moved here with a partner and there's no other community around. But it is, acceptance of what your situation is. And then, as you said, doing your best in that environment. And the main thing is that you're managing your holistic health and making sure that you're feeling calm and supported. And I think that's really important for mama, right? Throughout the pregnancy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And talking about those emotions and not holding them in and knowing that you can speak more to this than I can, but postpartum, that your emotions are going to be quite fragile, right? There's a lot of changing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that's just such an important thing, what you just said, that it's not about, oh, I have to feel good all the time, because I know I felt that pressure a lot during my first pregnancy of like, if I feel sad or if I'm feeling angry, like, oh, I can't feel these things because my baby's also feeling them. But it's not about not feeling what you feel. That's what one of my girlfriends said to me during a really difficult time during my first pregnancy that I was having with one of my close relationships. She said, it's not about not feeling. It's about showing your baby that you're going to feel all sorts of things in your life. How do you navigate them with awareness and with consciousness so that you can grow from your experience? And so you don't get closed down by it.
Right.
And so you are going to feel all sorts of things, whether it's during pregnancy, postpartum, into motherhood, your whole life. It's not about not feeling. It's not about just wanting the good things. I just want to be happy and bubbly. That's not life. We're going to experience the full banquet of human emotion. And that's what we're meant to be experiencing.
Yeah.
And how do we trust that every experience is medicine? Every emotion that's arising, it's medicine, actually. It's something that needs to be felt and moved, unpacked, integrated. Ideally you have somebody there that can hold the space for you to feel so that you don't feel alone. That's another Vata emotion. When Vata is high, we tend towards loneliness and isolation. And that's, like you said, something very common postpartum is this feeling of, I'm all alone in my experience. Nobody else can relate to me. And so, like you said, to go to a class where there's other new mamas with babies can feel so supportive because you realize like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah. And
so to find an online community. In our soul space community, we have the village, which is all new mamas, where we come together every week. And it's just so common these days that mamas don't have the support they need. So to find communities online, there's so many where you can drop in and you can share, these are my challenges and these are my joys, and hear like, oh my gosh, me too.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's totally normal. I know for me and with my first baby, just to hear, oh, that's normal would bring so much ease to my nervous system. Like,
I can imagine.
Okay. Yeah. So to not feel alone, to do what you can. And there are places to connect, even if it's not in your real reality. If it is online, then to get that support.
That's beautiful. So you have this soul space community where new mamas meet.
Yeah.
Online?
In the soul space community, there's also a small group called the Village, where we probably have about 40 or 50 mamas right now, and we have weekly calls. So if you can join, beautiful. If not, beautiful. People can bring their babies or not. And we have topics every week that we explore together, and it's just a sweet space to drop in, and it's always nourishing. It's always
wonderful.
Nourishing.
It's great that you're providing that. Well, Dhyana, this has been wonderful. Great conversation. And I'd love to finish up here if there's anything else that you want to share that we hadn't touched on, because there's so much in this book. But also I'd love you to talk about how would you like readers to use this book?
I mean, ideally, if you're listening and you're like, oh, one day I would love to be a mother, it's a great time to get this book and to begin to explore what it looks like. The journey of becoming a mother in a very conscious and wholesome way. Perhaps you're already in the journey of preconception. It's also a great time to pick it up. And so it can really walk you through the whole process of preconception, pregnancy, preparing for labor, birth, postpartum. And hopefully it's like I can hold your hand in that journey, and you can just feel the support and the nourishment and the confidence of, you're doing this, mama, and you're doing a great job. But also, yeah, wherever you are in your motherhood journey, if you're already pregnant, there's so much there, especially, in preparing for labor and birth and postpartum. If you've already had your baby, I also have insights in the newborn mother, because that's a whole other aspect of how to mother with more awareness. And especially, our little heart doctors, our babies, they're like the greatest medicine for our own healing and our own growth and our own evolution. So how to enter into the journey of motherhood with that awareness of how do I utilize this relationship to grow and to heal and to deepen so that ultimately I can show up and love you in the ways that I'm meant to love you. It's like they teach us how to love without conditions, and it's profound. And so, yeah, it's like wherever you are on your motherhood journey, I pray that this book can be a resource for you and that you can then pass it on to your friends, your daughters, and generations to come.
Love that. Wonderful. Well, before we finish up, Dhyana, can you tell people where they can find out more about you, where they can find your book, Ayurveda Mama, a comprehensive guide preparing for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, and your offerings?
Thank you so much, Colette.
Pleasure.
My website is thesisterscience.com, and there you'll find access to Soul Space. We run an Ayurveda health retreat in Alachua, Florida. So if you want to come receive healing treatments or cleanses, personal retreats, group retreats, I'm on Instagram almost daily. It's at Dhyana.Masla. And my book, anywhere that books are sold, you can find it on Amazon, at shambhala.com. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Dhyana, congratulations again on your beautiful book. Such a great offering. And thank you for all the beautiful offerings you're putting out into the world.
Thank you. You as well, Colette.
It's been a pleasure. Take good care of yourself.
Such a joy. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dhyana, and please check out all the links in the show notes and check out her new book, Ayurveda Mama. If you would like some support on your Ayurvedic journey, then check out my online services. I offer an Ayurvedic cleanse tailored to you, comes with a 90-minute consultation, so I can tailor this holistic cleanse to you and your lifestyle. It includes an online platform with webinars, yoga videos, pranayama, mindfulness practices, and lots more. I also offer online consultations where I can put a strategy together for your diet, lifestyle, self-care, and mindfulness practices, and educating you on your unique constitution and on any current imbalances, and making sure I educate you on how to pacify those imbalances. And I have my online self-paced educational program. That's the 28-day daily habits for a holistic health program. So check out that online on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, or just click on the link in the show notes. If you think this episode will be helpful to family or friends, please share it with them so we can spread this wonderful wisdom of Ayurveda and yoga. And if you haven't already subscribed or followed the podcast, then please do so, and the new weekly episodes will automatically download for you. Please join me on social media. On Facebook, I'm under Elements Healing and Wellbeing, and my new Instagram page is Elements of Ayurveda Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.